Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tribal Council podcast, where on this podcast, Survivor represents our life, and when it gets canceled, so do we. I'm joined here with my good friend Connor Boudreau. Unfortunately, I am not joined by Jessica today. We just did this episode a little bit too late, and she wanted to go to bed, so it's just gonna be me and Connor for today. Um, with that
Boo, sleep.
With that being said, we're going
Boo.
to switch up the format slightly just because in previous episodes we've talked about each of the players in the order that I feel like they have the most likely chance of winning. That didn't make sense, but you get what I mean. Um, but because there's not a lot to talk about for a decent chunk of the players after this episode, we're just going to go through the events of the episode and we'll talk a little bit about the edit. I'll put my rankings up on screen and it'll be cool. So, with that being said, pretty much the first thing that happens in the episode is an idol hunt, actually, between the members of Hina Tribe. I believe it's Jason suggests a group idol hunt. MC and Steven decide that they're going to split themselves up so that to maximize the possibility that one of them gets the idol. MC finds the Beware advantage, tells Steven about it. No, I can't remember Connor. Does she tell anyone else about it?
No, she does not. It's something that at the time just the two know from what I remember. Um, which is definitely very telling. They feel very confident with each other.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to get into much later in the episode, actually, when we talk about the next time on. But what I'll say for now is that, I, not that it comes out of nowhere, but the MC and Steven relationship kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, in episode 1, we see Steven literally form relationships with every single member of his tribe, except Sophie. I don't think we see anything between him and Sophie, from what I remember. But the conversation with him and MC is very short compared to the rest of them, very non-committal, it seems, compared to the rest of them. And it really seemed like Steven and Matt were tightly aligned. And even Steven and Jason might be more tightly aligned than Steven and MC. But this episode, all of a sudden, they are seemingly ride or dies. I don't know if that's a situation where maybe Steven is MC's number one, but MC isn't necessarily Steven's number one. That being said, he does, in his confessional, basically say she is, so could just be a situation where the edit didn't really show that relationship to us as much as it could have until it became relevant, and it wasn't really relevant until this episode. Um, what do you think that means for MC and Steven's odds of winning overall, just edit wise?
I definitely think it brings an interesting bit of almost intrigue as to why it took a couple episodes for that to really be shown. My best guess is they just didn't really have significant idol success prior, and they just really didn't feel like it was necessary content. But it's odd. It almost makes me think that there's a big moment with their connection and this idol, but that otherwise they aren't too significant outside of that couple bit of moments. Like it's a very weird situation of like almost you have to think all of the sudden that they're important more so than they are, but we're steadily seeing Steven get less and less confessionals, and MC is climbing stagnantly. So it's odd for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of tells me that neither of them have as great of a chance of winning. I still have them in the middle of my rankings, mostly just because of some other people that have had worse edits, but there's like an idea in Edgic called like circumstantial content. Basically, if the content that someone's getting is purely circumstantial, if it's purely necessary, and if it's content that's purely necessary to the story of the season, if it's content that they couldn't really get away with avoiding showing, then it doesn't really necessarily contribute to someone's chances of winning in a positive way. And if you look at somebody's edit and you see that that's all the content they're getting, even if it's a lot of content, you have to start to question. And like the relationship, for example, between Steve and MC, it wasn't shown until it was expressly relevant. Whereas historically, we would expect for a winner, if they have a relationship like that that's going to be important, it would usually be set up earlier, not strictly once it becomes like immediately relevant. So to me, that definitely decreases Steven and MC's odds overall. But with that being said, I mean, there are some contestants so far that have had really bad edits up to this point, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, especially on that Hina Yellow Tribe. Dude, they have, let's see, Sophie has like 3 total confessionals. Christina's been skunked twice in a row.
Yeah.
Jason was skunked once. Matt got skunked. Sophie got skunked. So, like, that little content, it's really tough to see that tribe as a whole as being very important or complex.
Well, and that's the thing. When 4 members of your tribe get skunked, one of them twice, it almost doesn't even matter if you've been skunked. At that point, it's like your tribe as a whole isn't relevant. We've talked about complex tribe theory. It really doesn't, that in of itself really doesn't look good for Steven and Matt, or Steven and MC, even if neither of them have been skunked so far, even if both of them have 7 confessionals each, which isn't necessarily anything to scoff at. Um, the fact that 4 out of 6 of their tribe members have been skunked isn't a great sign, mind you. There is something that we'll talk about later that could save them and could save their edit. But we will get into that much later into the episode. So, now I believe the next thing that happened, just via process of elimination, must have been back on the Red Tribe. Sage, sort of feeling insecure about her position on the tribe, goes to Shannon, sort of throws Savannah's name out there. Shannon immediately comes back to Savannah, says, "Hey, Sage is putting out your name." And Savannah's basically like, "Look, Jawan, after he chose to help the tribe over helping himself on that journey, kind of earned a little bit of credit. And now Shannon's putting my name out there. I can't be having that." Sorry, not Shannon, Sage. That is my bad. Now Sage is putting my name out there. I can't be having that. That could spell trouble for Sage, barring, the tribe swap next episode. And again, it's more focus being put on Savannah. Obviously not a great move on Sage's part. What do you think Sage could have done to improve her standings in the tribe? Because clearly throwing out Savannah's name wasn't the right move.
I mean, there's a couple of better steps that could have definitely been taken. A great start typically never is throwing out names without knowing who you can and can't talk to about these things. If you don't feel good about it, you should immediately go to people you think are on the bottom. She explicitly says in her confessional, she's like, I'm going to go to Shannon because I feel like she's the top dog. Well, if she's the top dog, you're probably talking to one of her allies. So, like, Sage should not have gone straight to Shannon thinking, oh, I'm going to go to the person who's in charge of the game and tell them to flip on their ally. Maybe a better idea. Hey, Jawan, someone who's also not really as in the loop. Or maybe go to someone that she could see as the potential outlier of the tribe and go to Nate, given he's a little older, so he might not be as connected with the group. Right? Go bond with him over something. There's definitely a better way that could have been approached. Not to mention, if you don't stir up problems, you're not going to be associated as a problem. Just help around, camp a little extra, put in a little extra work, and just be a fun social piece for the team. It's not going to have a bad rap. If you're worried about your perspective in the eyes of your tribe members. Pinning people for problems when they could potentially be allies is almost never a good solution, especially this early in the game.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is just trying to form some sort of connection. Like maybe you still go to Shannon, but instead of saying, um, I want to target Savannah, say like, look, I don't really know who I want to target at this point. It's a little early to be worrying about that, but I really feel good about you. Maybe you and me could form some sort of alliance. Maybe we could pull in a couple other people. Um, and I want to see where your head is at because I want to work with you and I want to work with the people you want to work with. So, you know, let's work something out. I feel like that's a much better approach than like going to someone and saying, "Yeah, I have a target. It's Savannah." Um, and just like hoping that Shannon isn't close with Savannah enough to go, "Hey, that really doesn't make me feel good about Sage." So, Um, definitely just trying to form connections and form some sort of group before you throw targets out there is, um, I think a pretty big, almost rule in terms of survivor strategy. Like, don't go throwing names out until you have a solid foundation and you know that you're going to be able to do that safely. Um,
Yeah, just overall, definitely lacking the awareness to make the right decision in that moment.
yeah. Absolutely. And then that brings us into the main event of the episode, I suppose. Jake is chilling by the water and he gets bit by a banded sea crate, I believe they're called. Um, a sea snake. I think they're technically not snakes, but you know, very similar creatures. Um, yeah, it's a very scary moment. It's funny though because he kind of is just like, "Hey guys, check this out. This a snake latched onto me." Um, but it ultimately ends in him being pulled from the game. And I wanted to get your perspective, Connor, because I've received some extra information post episode, but I'd like to hear your perspective on him getting removed after everything was sort of dealt with and like after they sort of figured out, sort of assessed the situation and everything. Because it was a little bit of a controversial thing, right?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is there's a certain set of circumstance that comes into play when you're trying to make a decision like that. I've never been on the grandiose scale of, you know, hosting $1 million game, but, I've dealt with in group sessions, coaching youth athletes, and when someone comes up with an injury, sometimes you want to take extra precautions given certain circumstances. Now, in Jake's circumstances, he's an expecting father who has just gone through a very mentally traumatic, physically traumatic event. There was immediately noticeable swelling in his foot, regardless of the fact that there was no present venom in his system. It is definitely a very difficult call to have to make a decision like that, especially given the fact that there is so much on the line for the players. So, in my opinion, I understand why the decision could be made to pull someone from a game like this. It is a very dangerous set of circumstances to throw someone back in, and it's something that happens once and it kind of startles you, and yeah, you might get over it, but like it'll be something that will come up in future seasons as well, and definitely like it's going to be a reminder for players that this is a very real situation in the game of Survivor, because like you were a second away from watching a very critical condition, a very important moment in Survivor history where something goes catastrophically wrong. And even still, it was a very difficult experience for the players to see what happened without major repercussions for Jake. So yeah, I think all things considered, there's definitely arguments to be weighed both ways. I think, unfortunately, they have to treat it for the worst case, and he is a kid that he's hoping to go home to. You have to play it safe.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that wasn't necessarily shown as much in the episode, but that was sort of confirmed after the fact, was it seems like they actually weren't nearly as certain that it was a dry bite as was portrayed in the episode. Um, Kind of seems like there was a little bit of questioning whether or not, like, basically, from what I was able to gather, it sounded like um, they were fairly certain that it was a dry bite, but they couldn't be sure without further testing. And on even if there's a sliver of a chance that it wasn't, and there was some venom in that bite, there's just no possibility that they could risk that. And like at first, when I watched the episode, I was like, "Oh, they determined it's a dry bite." Like other than the psychological effect, sounds like that really isn't much worse than like a cat biting you kind of hard or something like that. But knowing that they weren't actually certain that it was a dry bite and that there could have been some venom involved, it makes a lot more sense that they pulled him from the game. Um, yeah. So
So,
that's sort of
something else from the sorry to add as well. Something as well from the body perspective. Sometimes when your body experiences a physical trauma response, it can stimulate worse reaction to prepare yourself for the outcome. So I mentioned as well the swelling in his foot. A bite like that wouldn't induce swelling typically unless there's a trauma response from the muscles and the nerves in that area. There was also something that isn't going to be talked about nearly enough. He was going to be in severe pain in his foot for a while because there is going to be some nerve trauma and some damage that was done as it was trying to kind of prepare itself for the adrenaline and prepare it, the body for the physical reaction to the bite. So that is something that also had to be considered as well, is beyond just the potential of venom, there is also going to be damage done to the nerve in his foot anyways.
right.
Right? That could have also been close to a blood vein because it was on the bottom of his foot and there's a couple veins in the lower end of your foot. So there's a whole other situation of scenarios to play into this beyond just whether it was a completely dry bite or are we being extra precautious. Again, he's an expecting father. You have to take that risk to keep the player safe.
Yeah, no, for sure. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like it's a really scary situation. Like I'm glad he's okay. He wasn't he wasn't my favorite player on the season so far, but you know, eh, especially someone with a kid on the way, that is really a rough thing to go through. So, you know, obviously the most important thing is that he is okay. Um, but
On the one bright side that I could conclude with, at least he has a really cool story for this kid.
yeah,
He survived a venomous snake bite.
that that is definitely a story. That is
Now, next event, the challenge.
yes. We
We
go
get to see
premium
them show
challenge.
up, and man, it's a very emotional moment. You get to see all three tribes really, really almost feel this like emotional trauma together in a way that you don't necessarily expect to see, right? They're competitors. They're fighting against each other in this game. But for a moment in time, everyone came together and we got to see, as a unit, the players go through this moment of unfortunate news together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really rough because obviously you like you want to win that challenge if you're on red or yellow tribe, if you're on Hina or Uli, but at the same time there has to be some almost like guilt involved in gunning for it when you know how badly Kelo tribe is suffering, basically. I feel like Jason, if anything, seemed to be the most like sort of choked up about it. Like he seemed pretty concerned about having to, you know, continue to dominate these challenges while Sophie, Alex, and Jeremiah are all like begging for mercy.
Yeah, very very tough situation to watch for sure as a player.
With that being said, I guess we move on to, well, the challenge. Um, you know, Kelly loses again. Hina dominates it again. It all comes down to the puzzle again. I mean, Kella just can't do a puzzle to save their lives. Um, but as tragic as it is, the three of them have to go back to tribal council, and it's an interesting dynamic because Alex just lost his closest ally to a medical evacuation. Sophie and Jeremiah seem to be somewhat close. And they could have just said, "Hey, look, two of us vote out Alex, we'll be all good." Except Alex, of course, had an idol, and I mean that's got to be a rough thing for them to work around. Um, Obviously they go down the route of potentially trying to get him not to play it. They go down the route of targeting each other, and it's interesting the way that it culminates. I don't know, if you're Sophie or you're Jeremiah, like what's your opinion on sort of the best way to handle that sort of situation?
I think it depends on how you choose to proceed in the game. I definitely know from Sophie's perspective, she mentioned very much so multiple times pregame, now during the game, that she feels most comfortable having someone who is more perceivably a physical threat and potentially an overall threat in the game.
Mm,
I don't necessarily know that Jeremiah poses a bigger threat than Sophie. Alex does, especially if word gets out he has an idol, or the thought of, hey, he might have an idol. Whereas Jeremiah is not more physically imposing, clearly not a better puzzle maker, and overall, people seem to have this idea that Sophie could be, very strategically inclined, which, rightfully so, is how she escapes this tribal. So I see from her perspective definitely wanting to do that. From Jeremiah's, I almost think the opposite. I think if he can try and move forward without Alex in the game, that could potentially have been his best option. And I definitely see the idea of working with Sophie as his best potential outcome because it doesn't seem like those two would go in, to a swap situation where they're super strategic, super powerful as a duo, and they could actually work really well together. Ultimately, you know, one strategy prevails more than another. Poor Jeremiah, just tough.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day with Jeremiah, I think he just didn't have, like, I don't know, I guess, like, he didn't have the connections that Sophie had. I mean, obviously, particularly with Alex, and with Alex having an idol, there just wasn't much that he could do about it. Um, couldn't really target Sophie, couldn't really target Alex. We see him vote for Alex at the end of the day, but, that it's just a tough situation going to tribal after having one of your own tribe mates medically evacuated. That's just that's just rough. You did bring up an interesting strategy while we were watching the episodes of something that Alex could have done. Um,
Yes, that was something that I came up with. I thought it was kind of clever in the moment. So theoretically, from Alex's perspective, I was thinking, what's the best way Alex can truly save himself? No matter what, he doesn't go home. And I was thinking about it. You don't require your vote, play an idol. So what if he walked in tribal and said, look, I'm playing my shot in the dark today. Theoretically, could save the idol, force the other two to pick between each other. Now, obvious downside. Doesn't show great trust if you walk into tribal and say, hey, I'm going to be safe no matter what happens. You two fight it out. But it is the ultimate, in my mind, insurance policy. And that's something that would have been a very cool Survivor first, to see someone play a shot in the dark with an idol in pocket.
No, technically, Rachel did the exact thing that you're suggesting that Alex should have done. She did it early merge of Survivor 47. Mind you, she went a bit of a step further with it, because what she did was she played her shot in the dark, and instead of just, sitting to see if it hit or not, and if it missed, play her idol, she also um, took the precaution of looking at the reactions of the people of the other people on the tribe. Now, mind you, with Alex, like, people were kind of expecting him to play his idol anyway, so this wouldn't really make much sense for him. But she sort of read the reactions of the people um, who were of the people on her tribe after she played the shot in the dark, to see if they seemed worried or concerned. And since they didn't, she didn't play it, and she was fine. Um, so it's definitely a creative strategy, but it has actually been used before in a way.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just would have liked to have seen someone play the shot in the dark and the idol back to back, and it's been twice. We've been close, and it
mhm.
just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Rachel had done that, she probably wouldn't have won the season. So we can
Boo hoo! I want fun, cool plays.
yeah. Misplaying an idol is not really that fun though. I'm always disappointed when someone
It's fun
misplays
to
an idol.
watch.
Not really. I would argue it's the opposite of fun to watch.
Depends on
Anyways,
how it's played, I should say.
there's uh there's actually one more thing that happened in the episode, and it's something that sort of plays into the edit for me a little bit. And you can make arguments, but midway through the post challenge segment that we actually cut back to Uli, which is an incredibly rare thing to cut to um, one of the safe tribes um, after an immunity challenge. And mind you, they didn't have to do that. They could have put the idol search that happens in this segment at the beginning of next episode, potentially before the tribe swap happens, or, you know, maybe they could have played it like it happened before the immunity challenge. Like, they have done stuff like that before. Mind you, the way it kind of starts off, they're like, I think they're like, with like Uli going down to 2 members, there might be a tribe swap. We should try to find something. So they would have had to cut that part of the conversation out somehow. But either way, they very rarely go and cut to an immune tribe after an immunity challenge. And the last time I can think of that it happened was the Yanu tribe on Survivor 46. And ultimately, Kenzie, the winner, did come from that tribe. So it could be something to think about, that maybe that points towards the winner coming from Red Tribe.
Definitely is a distinct possibility. Very interesting moment for sure, and I completely agree. It's super odd. It feels almost out of place that you go back to a tribe that is clearly safe, that doesn't necessarily need content, and without it being a reward too. Because you'll see a cutback for a reward. That's typically very common content, but to show them just doing regular tribe activities, an idol hunt, a pretty normal event that they could have placed anywhere in that episode, or for that matter, in a different episode if needed. It just felt almost out of place in a good way for that group.
Especially with this vote being as complicated as it was. Like, if the winner were to come from the blue tribe, and we've already sort of established that the odds that the winner is coming from the yellow tribe are pretty low. So if the winner had come from the blue tribe, we would expect them to really want to focus on their tribal dynamics when they're about to head into tribal. And to be fair, like, we get plenty of, focus. We get plenty of content to explain sort of why the vote goes the way that it does. But I would think that if Alex or Sophie were the winner, that we might get a little bit more. So, I still have Sophie as my winner pick currently, but I don't know. I'm not like actually super confident about it. I could easily see, maybe Savannah overtaking her. next episode for sure. Like if that episode gives me any reason to believe Savannah should move up, she'll probably move up as my winner pick, and that'll be that. And this is something that definitely contributes to that. Um, the other thing to talk about concerning it is that Rizzo does find the Beware advantage, and I believe he tells everyone about it, pretty much. Like, I don't think he keeps it much of a secret.
Yeah, he definitely brings up the idea of this being for the group, potential swap coming up, and definitely thinking quite a bit ahead. I think he does show specifically everyone on the group,
Yeah, I don't think he keeps it
but
from anyone.
might have left. Yeah, I don't think he leaves anyone out.
Yeah, sort of like Alex, who doesn't really tell everyone collectively, but does ultimately end up telling everybody on his tribe about his idol. MC is really the only one, you know, keeping it a little bit of a secret. Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty much the events of the episode, but there's one more major thing to talk about, and that's the next time on, because we already know that we're getting a tribe swap, and we already know mostly how the divisions are going to go. So, almost certainly, it's going to be 2 tribes of 7. I saw some people floating around the idea of a 4-4-5 split, or yeah, with 3 tribes. But given everything that we've seen, I actually don't know that that's possible. So just going for the things that are 100% certain, we know for without a shadow of a doubt that Sophie, Jawan, Savannah, and Rizzo are on the Yellow Tribe. We all see them very clearly wearing yellow buffs. None of them originally come from the Yellow Tribe, so they must have swapped onto it. Those 4, 100%. Blue Tribe, there really actually isn't anyone who is completely certain on Blue Tribe, to be honest, except for Shannon. We see Shannon in a blue buff, and then that actually confirms, without beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Steven is also on Blue Tribe, because he gets a confessional talking about his opinion on Shannon as a person, and if they weren't on the same tribe, that would be extremely weird. So Steven and Shannon are confirmed 100% on Blue Tribe. Now, as for some other players that we can be fairly certain of, we hear Savannah talk about this so and so is like I think she might use the word psychopath, or like, crazy in some way. Uh yeah, she says he's cutthroat like like a freaking psychopath. And it cuts to Matt. I'm assuming that they're talking about Matt. He's in a yellow buff, but he was originally on Yellow Tribe. It could be from before the swap, that little clip. Um, but they would be faking us out on Savannah talking about Matt, and I don't know. It would just be a really weird thing for them to do, and I just don't think it's very likely. I think it's probably Matt is on Yellow Tribe, Savannah is talking about him, and that's that. So, as for Blue Tribe, we see Steven and Christina sitting together. Now, they are both originally on Yellow, so this could be a clip of them on Yellow. And we don't see what buff Steven's wearing. We do see Christina's buff, but it's inside out, and it's only the logo part. So it is blue, but it's the blue part of the logo that we're seeing, and I think I might see some yellow when I look at it. Let me just send the image to Connor so that he knows what I'm talking about here. So I think I see yellow. Like, I know I see yellow, but I'm not 100% sure if that's her buff or if it's some other article of clothing. I'll have this up on screen while I talk about it as well. It's hard to tell for me if she's wearing a yellow buff or a blue buff in this shot. But then the other thing is, when her head is up, we see something in the background that looks to be maybe a blue buff hanging somewhere. Now, we already know Steven's on Blue Tribe, so if this clip is taken from the post from like after the swap happens, then Christina's on blue for sure. And I'm leaning towards the fact that it should, because it's placed right between Shannon doing her meditation and Steven talking about his opinions about Shannon. So it just would be weird for them to place it here if it wasn't coming from the post-swap Kela tribe. But the little bit of yellow that Christina's clearly wearing, I don't know. Do you think, like, for sure that that's a buff, or like what else could that be? Because I don't know that we've seen Christina in like a yellow hoodie or anything like that.
I don't necessarily remember a yellow article of clothing. I could definitely do a quick inspection and see if something pops up from
Yeah, because
maybe survivors' social medias, but I don't remember it.
we know she wears a yellow shirt, but that looks like it's going a bit high on, like, sort of towards her face to be a shirt. You know what I'm saying?
And she does definitely also wear her buff like further back on her head, like not over her forehead, but like more like over her hair area. So like it could be her yellow buff. I don't know.
Yeah, but then you see that in the background. Does that not look like a blue buff kind of hanging up?
It does, and it's in a different spot than where she normally wears her buff. It almost makes me wonder if she like for some reason keeps both. I don't know. Like it's weird. It definitely looks out of place.
Yeah, I mean, because she's already wearing a gray hoodie, so she wouldn't be wearing a hoodie underneath it. It's just, and we don't see her like with anything in her hair that's yellow or anything like that. Like it's just her buff, really. So like, it looks like she's wearing a yellow buff around her neck, but that does look like a blue buff in the background. We know that Steven's on the blue tribe. The context of the clip suggests that it should be post swap. So at the end of the day, I am going to move forward with saying that that is probably um her wearing a, I don't know, some yellow article of clothing. Maybe it's her shirt and it's just like weirdly situated, and then she is on the blue tribe. And if she's on the blue tribe, and if that clip is from the post swap, we see in that same clip with Christina, um, just a slight sliver of what very clearly appears to be an African American person with dreadlocks or some sort of braids. So there's only really one person that would fit that description that it could possibly be, um, and that would be MC. So, I mean, Christina would also fit that description, but she's already in the clip, so couldn't be Christina. Meaning that MC is also most likely on the blue tribe. And then in the clip where Shannon is meditating, and we do see Shannon um, very clearly in a blue buff, uh, we see someone's shoulder, and it looks to be Alex's based on the shirt. I'll send Connor the clip again so that he knows what I'm talking about, or the screenshot, anyways. So yeah, that can only really be Alex's shoulder. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, it definitely does look like the same article you see Alex wear pretty often.
Yeah, I mean it's a blue shirt. Could technically be Sophie's, actually. Oh shit! Wait, actually, could it be Sophie's?
They have very similar articles. Like they both have a similarly colored blue, so it is potentially possible. Wouldn't be surprised if both end up together on that tribe,
Yeah,
but
I can't tell if that's a wrinkle. Excuse me, if that's a wrinkle or if it's a seam. I need to see if Alex has like a darker blue shirt that he wears with some sort of seam there, because otherwise, actually, we could be looking at. Okay, I'm thinking that that is probably Alex's shoulder, but It could
But
actually
again,
be Sophie's.
it could be either because they have a very similarly colored blue top.
Yeah. The only thing is like Sophie's shirt doesn't have like a seam there where like right on the shoulder there, whereas Alex's does.
Yeah, it's more prominent for sure.
So that's making me think it's probably Alex's shoulder. And if that's the case, that would place Alex on the blue tribe. And that would mean that we really only have Sage, Jawan, Sophie, and Nate as unknowns. Or sorry, not Jawan, Jason. I read that name wrong. Yeah, Sage, Jason, Sophie, and Nate as unknowns. Uh, quite frankly, I don't really have a good way of placing them other than I would think that that conversation that happens between Rizzo, Savannah, and Jawan. I think that if Nate were on Yellow Tribe, that that conversation would probably include him, and that would likely include Sage as well if she were on that tribe. So my tentative guess is that Sage and Nate are on the blue tribe, which would mean that Jason and Sophie are on the yellow tribe. But at the end of the day, we don't really know for sure. That's all speculation. Um, it makes sense to me that MC and Steven are on the same tribe because they get this relationship suddenly shown this episode. It would be weird for them to swap onto different tribes next episode. Um,
It definitely feels like they're hinting at something coming up. It makes me almost wonder if they have like a key voting decision either for or against them this upcoming episode. Because if not, why are we seeing this so randomly now?
and there's also Sage and Shannon who kind of get shown like talking to each other, even if it's not necessarily like they're actually forming like an alliance. It does make me think that maybe they could be on the same tribe, which would support my prediction that Sage will be on blue. So I mean, I'll have to see how it goes. As we get more promos, we might get more information, and we might have the tribes figured out by the time the episode airs. But for now, we have a pretty good idea of what the tribe breakdown is going to look like. And it's interesting that Savannah and Rizzo were kind of pegged as like a duo, and they're definitely on a tribe together. Any other duos that are definitely on a tribe together so far? Not really, other than MC and Steven, it looks like are on the same tribe. But ultimately, if the tribes do play out the way that I think they're going to, it's going to be an interesting situation because that would mean that we would have three reds and three blue, or three reds, three yellows, and one blue on each tribe. And we've seen a lot of dynamics that are similar to that in tribe swaps, and it's always a fun time. But it would definitely give Sophie and Alex a lot of power in the game.
Yeah, there's definitely a big weight to play if you are the solo person in two divided tribes, because very seldomly do we see two, split tribes go, okay, there's one extra person, let's just get rid of them and we'll worry about it later. Because then you're threatening a situation where a tie, a revote, and rocks could come up. Or if some kind of lost vote occurs where you get put in a position where you're in trouble all of a sudden. So it's a very interesting possibility that could occur where two individual people that want to work together, want to see each other down the line, could have control of potentially their tribe and get some power going into the merge. Have some potential alliances, maybe form some bonds.
I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see. We'll have a lot more to talk about in regards to the tribe swap next episode after it's actually happened and we've seen, maybe some cross tribal bonds form and everything. But for now, I'm definitely interested to see how the rest of the season goes. And I always love a tribe swap. It always makes things more exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of room for this to become very intriguing as a result.
For seasons with tribe swaps, sometimes the dynamics of the original tribes don't matter as much as the dynamics for the swap tribes. Like, for example, we see on Survivor 45, we have a tribe swap, and like, the original Reba tribe does get a decent amount of complexity, but it's really that swapped Reba tribe that gets a little bit more. And mind you, they do go to tribal where the original Reba tribe doesn't, and mind you, both tribes include D anyways. Um, but, well, I guess that's kind of the point. But, like, yeah, I mean, the swap tribe on that season for the winner maybe gets a little bit more complexity than the original tribe. Even more so, though, on season 48. Like, Siva really doesn't actually get that much complexity overall, but then that post-swap Vula tribe gets a ton. And, that really, I think, makes more of an impact on Kyle's story as a winner than the original Siva tribe does. I mean, for sure, right? So, if we see, like, maybe MC or Steven get, like, be on a swap tribe that gets, like, a lot of complexity, and the bonds that they form in that new tribe seem to be setting up, like, more of a story for them, maybe, than the bonds they set up on their original tribe, then they could move up on my rankings. But with how bad the original Hina tribe has been, even that feels pretty unlikely, if I'm being honest.
I wouldn't disagree too much with you there. Like there is some hope for certain Hina members, but the majority of Hina I think can be essentially written off at this point.
Yeah, well, nobody in the new era has ever gotten 0 confessionals in an episode in one. Uh, trends can always be broken, but when you look at, like, Christina, absolutely not. Sophie, absolutely not. Matt and Jason, maybe, but it's really, really, really not looking good for either of them. And then Steven and MC, again, a little bit better, but still not great.
Yeah, I mean, the one that honestly I think needs to jump up a little bit more and is the only real significant bright side on the Hina group is MC, given that it's been a steady increase, but one confessional in the debut of a season is not a good sign. It's basically the same as getting 0 in my mind.
Yeah,
And
the premiere is so important.
they just don't get established significantly in that episode. So it makes it a little tougher to genuinely consider them that important of a rank. So it'll be very interesting to see how the first couple swap episodes or post swap episodes go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but with that being said, that's pretty much everything I think there's to talk about, so we can probably leave the episode off here. So, hopefully you guys are looking forward to the next episode. I know me and Connor both are. And I hope you guys all have a very great day. And with that being said, the pod has spoken.